10:30 in India. I think I should give him a bit of a shout out.
Hello all and welcome to episode 47 of the Green Arrow, an FPL podcast by Fantasy Football Hub, as we exit a strange old Game Week 20 and look forward to a quick turnaround into Game Week 21. Apologies, been a little bit late. Adam had some camera issues, we're all sorted. I was a bit concerned that because he'd not had the best of game weeks and he's bench Southcheck, he was calling in sick, but he is here and ready to roll. A shout out, as Adam just said, I think the people might have heard actually as we were going live then, a shout out to everyone who normally can't tune in when we record a bit later. I think some guys in India and Asia and some other places, so very, very welcome to everyone. So my name is Fergie, and a good evening to my co-host Adam Hopcroft. Adam, what colour was your arrow in Game Week 20?
Red. It was a horror show. Yeah, it wasn't good. You did well though.
I did. What do you think about the old Rafinha call last week?
Wow, I was always going to go for Rafinha. That was great. It's a great shout. I think stepping back and thinking a bit logically, looking how bad Newcastle were, the team just did look better with Rafinha in. So yeah, you can take credit for that one. So he looked quite good. I thought had a good game.
Would you have played Southcheck over Rafinha?
No, do you know what? I wouldn't have. No. I would have. I was thinking of going 4-3-3. So it was a good call. That was one of the only things that that went my way or that I got right. So yeah, shall I give a bit of a summary? Or
yeah, please, don't mind.
Yeah, well, I do mind, but I will do it. It was a disaster. So I had Meslier in goal. He got me 3 points, which I think in comparison to the other keepers, I'll take that this week. So fairly pleased with that. I think Newcastle deserved at least a goal. So 3 points, I think I got away with that one. I started Kufal, Diaz and Robertson. And I think with Kufal, he was so unlucky not to get an assist. I mean, how Antonio missed that chance, which would have got him an assist. And I think that's the story of the game week. Fine margins. I think Diaz got me a 6. Robertson, I mean, fine margins there in the sense that Trent's the one that gets the haul. Son gets his goal disallowed. I'm okay, I'll lie in Robertson. I'll get a clean sheet. And with Spurs 0.10 XG, they find the goal. It's just absolute madness. I don't even get a clean sheet there. And it's not Son's, of course, he's not involved. My midfield had Son. Well, start with Son. I mean, as soon as that goal was disallowed, I knew it was going to be, and he missed a chance shortly after, didn't he?
And it was an absolute classic Spurs goal as well. How many times have you seen Son in that inside left channel run onto a through ball, and you knew he was going to score because he's that good at finishing? And that stray heel offside was a real shame for Son owners.
I think that's the frustrating thing, and I know it's been happening for a season and a half now, but when you lose goals, so effectively this week, in my head anyway, I lost that Son goal. Like a lot of others, I owned Salah. I lost the Salah goal,
yeah, same, yeah.
which was quite painful. Obviously, Fernandez captain. I mean, that's fine. No, he wasn't great. I think he created a big chance for Greenwood, but other than that, he wasn't brilliant. But everyone captained him, so nothing lost there. And I had Rafinha, which I was really, really pleased with. So good shout. And then Bamford, who did nothing, went off after 59 minutes. Yes. It was a little bit of a concern.
Strange one, that one, yeah.
Yeah, and then I had Antonio and Watkins up front, and I think both of them could have got double figures. I mean, Antonio, this is probably my big frustration with the game week. So we look at our teams. You don't own Antonio. You've had a great week, which we'll go through in a second. But to come away with 5 points from that is absolutely devastating. And to be fair, Souček had two decent chances, and that's it. And he gets maximum points. So that was frustrating. And I think equally for Watkins. I mean, he probably should have done better. So I finished, I think it was on 45. The thing that I regret the most isn't actually benching Souček. It's probably two things. So the first one, I bought in Son instead of Gundogan, because I thought I thought I'm definitely going to want Son. And with Kane getting injured, that's pretty much a negative effect. And I didn't take a -4 to get Cancelo, and that was in our chats before we filmed last week. We talked about that, and Yeah, it's a big regret that is, because I think it's the -4 for Cancelo's the big one, because that would have he'd have come in for Kufal. So what's that? 16, maybe 16 points. Well,
Yeah,
13
I
after
mean,
the -4.
you can never really predict defensive attacking returns. Over the one game week, I think you've been really unlucky. I think the reason I was so kind of bullish on getting him in is because they've now got another run of fixtures and double game weeks, and he's one of their most attacking players as well, as well as defensive points. So I just thought a hit last week was worth it. But you were unfortunate that he actually went, you were in a bit of a mad one.
I think, yeah, and I think on the flip side of that, I mean, if I'd have owned Trent instead of Robertson, which is the decision, then you get away with that. Because I think Trent wasn't too far off. Palace didn't actually create that much, so he could have easily have got a clean sheet there. So I think it's a frustrating game week, and I think since I've wildcarded whatever game week, there hasn't really been anything that I feel big that has gone my way. I think there's been a lot of these 50-50 decisions. So I'm expecting big things coming up in the next few game weeks. I'm expecting a few, the VAR system to break and a blatant offside to be given a goal or something. Yeah. I'm expecting a little bit to go my way. But I think, I think I can blame myself for the Cancelo quarters. I should have done that. But yeah, I mean, what I would say, I've got a red arrow, and I think it's about 20,000 red arrows. So I'm down to about 100, no, probably 15,000, about 120k. So I can live with that. I sort of got away with it, but it was a missed opportunity. Because if I'd have brought Gundogan and Cancelo in, I'd have done what you did and zoomed up the ranks. So yeah, I think that's enough of my doom and gloom and feeling sorry for myself. Let's lift the mood with your score. I think we've got to start with Gundogan, haven't we?
If we must, But yeah, I took a -4 last week, and I took out De Bruyne and put in Gundogan. I've been corrected on Twitter. It's Gundogan, not Gundogan. We've got to drop that second G. So Gundogan, and I brought in Cancelo for Loughton for a hit, which was a hell of an upgrade. So I had Martinez in goals, Diaz, Dallas, and Cancelo frustrating for Dallas to concede against Newcastle. And obviously, Dallas also scored with his arm as well. So I feel a bit aggrieved there to just get a couple of points off him, but that's that.
It was pretty blatant, though. I mean, of a handball. It was. I think the Salah one was a little. I mean, it was. I think it was rightly ruled out, but yeah, it's a bit tighter.
Gundogan, obviously 14, looked absolutely superb, and I think he did in that game. He showed what De Bruyne has been trying to do over the last few weeks. Is when he gets an opportunity, he very calmly composes himself and slots it in the corner, which is what De Bruyne hasn't been doing. He's been kind of panicking a bit and dragging it wide or hitting it kind of straight at the keeper. But Gundogan's finishing is just, his all-round play, everything about him at the moment. And, if he is on penalties, which we think he is, for 5.6 million, I mean, has there ever been a cheaper, better asset? I'm not sure. Maybe Mahrez.
Mahrez.
Maybe Mahrez and maybe Kane a few years ago.
Mahrez, Vardy, Kane. I think he's got to do a little bit more to catch up with them.
5.6 million, though. I mean,
I think Kane was in his first season. He was about 5 million, or even cheaper, wasn't he? And then I think Mahrez is probably the one you could argue. But, look,
maybe a bit early to call.
I'll give you that. I think it's an incredible shout, and my concern with Gundogan is that right?
Gundogan, yeah.
Or Gundogan. My concern with him was that I know he's playing a different role, and I know it's a different Man City team, but historically he's never had the numbers. And I thought, well, I'll give him another week because he's been doing exceptionally well recently. And do you know what? I think he had 2 shots and 2 goals, didn't he? But I think the quality of the finishes, they were caressed into the net.
Exactly.
He didn't look like we just said about De Bruyne. Never looked like missing, and I think he's getting a lot of space. That's probably the thing I noticed the most, is that where you've got the forwards and the are probably getting closed down a lot more. He can just ghost in, and I think there was the first goal, the ball from Cancelo. He had so much space, didn't he? So Yeah, I think it's an incredible call, and when you called it however many weeks ago. So yeah, I think you deserve those points. It would have been such a shame if you didn't bring him in and he'd have done that.
Well, I brought him in free hit in 18, and it was the only week he didn't score points in 4 weeks. So I'm pleased. I got him in now. I'm even more pleased that obviously got him now ahead of Sheffield United and Burnley as well. I had Soucek, so I had a bit of a benching headache, but I've been burnt by Soucek benching so many times. I thought there's no way I'm leaving him on the bench, and I'm so glad I never. It's one of those 50-50s, right? But it went well. I had Bruno as captain, and I had Salah and Son the same, who both scored, both deserved points but didn't get them. And I had Watkins and Bamford up front. For the first time this season, I think, I benched the right players. So I benched Kufal, Justin, and Adams, who had 1, 1, and a 2. So I was really pleased with that. And I think, our luck has switched a little bit. I think at the moment, in terms of 50-50s, it's swinging my way at the moment. Whereas maybe earlier it was going against me, it's going for me at the moment, and vice versa. But I'm sure it will come back. But yeah, kind of looking forward now to the next few weeks. And I've taken a hit the last 2 weeks, and I'm thinking of taking another hit because I just want to keep my team on the front foot ahead of the curve. But we will talk about that a little bit later. So as we are live, everyone, please feel free to join in the chat at any time. Let us know your thoughts on the topics of the relevant sections, and feel free to ask us any questions. We have a packed lobby as usual. Thank you so much for everyone who is joining us. Denver CPT Gavinho said he could have scored 5 goals and ends up with 5 points. James Beacock, Oliver Asht, John FPL Heaney, who wrote that wonderful Leeds thread earlier. If everyone hasn't seen that on Twitter, FPL Heaney, on why you shouldn't sell your Leeds assets. Mihailo S, Sheila Shejaraj, almost 60% of the top 10k benched Soucek. That is an incredible stat. Gavinho 99. Even Gundo's beard and hair combo is great. The man is great at everything. I've got to agree with you there, Gavinho. Azrul Afandi, Ben Booth, Ibrahim Aman, and the GOAT. So we've already had lots and lots of questions. Nearly all these questions we are going to answer throughout the podcast. So don't fear. We will answer everything. So this evening, we're going to look ahead to game week 21, including looking at that dreaded Harry Kane injury and what it could mean for FPL teams. We'll look at the best player picks for the next 4 game weeks. We will reveal our current game week 21 teams and plans. We'll look at the best captaincy options for game week 21. It looks absolutely wide open this week, with probably 6 or 7 really good candidates there. We'll give the competition results for game week 20 and look to give away another prize this week, before finally taking a look at the top of the Green Arrow podcast mini league. So firstly, Adam, the big story obviously is the injury to the only premium striker of note left to pick, Harry Kane. Ben Dinnery on Twitter tweeted that Mourinho has said 2 ankles. The first was a bad tackle. It was Thiago. The second one, I don't know well, but 2 injuries in both ankles. The second one worse than the first. A few weeks. I don't know. There are some players you can't replace. This obviously intimates that Harry Kane is likely to be out for a few weeks. What are your thoughts, Adam, firstly on the injury itself, on any repercussions for FPL owners?
Yeah, I mean, it's becoming a little bit of a regular thing with Kane and his ankles, which is really unfortunate, because I think he was having his best season. But we could argue it's probably his best ever season, definitely up there. So yeah, it's really, really unfortunate. I think there are replacements, but I don't think there are any obvious like for like placements. I think you're going to have, if you're looking at the options available, Vardy's out injured. You go down a little bit. You've got the likes of Firmino, who could be an option, but flatters to deceive. Jesus, exactly the same. Chelsea, guess the starter. I think if Werner, I thought he could have been a possibility, but then he's benched. So, and the way Chelsea played, I mean, do you see their tweet about pass and move, pass and move?
How ridiculous was
the most
that?
embarrassing. So I was watching Villa versus Burnley,
Pass and move.
All Chelsea fans, because I've got nothing against Chelsea at all, but I mean, all they were doing is just passing it sideways, keeping the ball. If you want to watch a team play football, Villa's football against Burnley are probably about 22 minutes into half time. There was some exceptional football. I just thought it was just cringe-worthy. They hardly created anything.
It was awful. And they played this clip of, 16 passes, which led to a nothing cross on the right-hand side, which got cleared. And it was like, even the counter. And they would just pass it along the back line. It was very, very strange tweet that.
If Villa would have posted that, I'd been cringing.
It's almost like a parody, isn't it? It's almost like a parody. It was that bad. Oh, we made 820 passes. You scored no goals. 0. Yeah, that's what counts.
Yeah, exactly. And they went nowhere, really. It was terrible. It's absolutely embarrassing. So, yeah, anyway, that was Chelsea. So I think, look, if you're looking at the options, I think, for me, there were 4 clear options, if you don't own them, that really stand out at the moment. That is Antonio. Every time he's looking sharper now. He missed chances, but he was sort of getting the chances that he was getting towards the end of last season. I think the 2 games before, he scored and done well, but he wasn't, maybe lacked that little bit of sharpness. And I think he's coming back to his best. I mean, he was outstanding. I mean, hit the post twice today, and so you could put that down to bad luck, really, couldn't you? Yeah. We're talking fractions there. So I think, and the good thing about Antonio is fixture proof. I would not be surprised if he scored versus Liverpool. I think he's done well. He's historically done quite well in the tougher games, hasn't he? So he scored v City at the start of the season. So scored away at Arsenal. So for me, I would, I think I'd probably say Antonio is my favourite option. I think looking at the others, some great options. I think Ollie Watkins. I think he's got a goal now. He's got 2 in 2, but he's consistently getting the chances. And the Villa team, well, I thought we obviously made quite a few mistakes defensively, but we're creating so much. And I think Watkins is looking sharp. So I think he's another option. So I like Antonio and Watkins. And then I think you've got 2 possibles with Calvert-Lewin, who's fixed next 4 are quite good. But what I like about Calvert-Lewin is the fact that you've got the main people back in terms of creativity. Dina, Richarlison, Rodriguez. He's got Newcastle, who are absolutely... We haven't got FPL George in here, have we? So I can just...
Oh, he's working tonight.
There was a clip. So there was a clip in the Villa versus Newcastle game where Jack Grealish he actually got caught on Sky going, "These are so shit. Just keep the ball moving." And they're absolutely terrible. And I think Leeds maybe struggled against them. I think they did a little bit better the other night against Leeds. But I think that's a great fixture. He's got Leeds and is it Fulham coming up as well? Sorry, Leeds. It's Leeds and Fulham, isn't it, in the next 4? And then the other one that I like is Lacazette. So he's just form's been brilliant. I mean, if you look at Arsenal, I think Lacazette for me is someone who's probably fixture proof, because if you look historically again, he's actually scored quite well in the big games. So he scored against the likes of Liverpool and the top teams before. So I wouldn't have a concern about that. Arsenal playing really well. They're actually creating chances. They've made a very good signing in the transfer window, who sort of got competition. So he's a player that I would like. I can't quite make it work this week. I think in the coming weeks, he's good value, 8.3 million. So for me, I would want to own, if you're going for 3 up front, I'd want to own 3 of those four strikers. And I think they're probably the best like-for-like replacements. Is there anybody else that you like or would shout?
Yeah, we'll look at the stats a bit later on some of those players as well. Lacazette was quite higher passing in some of them, so we'll look at those. I think just in terms of Kane himself, I think firstly, I tend to take Mourinho's comments on injuries, at first with a bit of a pinch of salt. I don't think that Kane will play this weekend against Brighton, and obviously they've got then what will be a difficult attacking game for them against Chelsea next Thursday. So I'm not saying to hang on to him in the slightest because their fixtures are not, kind of not the best anyway. But I'm not, well, he may be out for weeks and weeks, and he probably will be.
But you look at it because what you've just said there is that I think he's going to miss this game realistically.
I think so.
He's then got Chelsea, West Brom, Man City, and you can say that those Chelsea and Man City games are going to be quite tight and tough games. You're relying on him getting back for West Brom, which isn't, may or may not be likely. So 11 million or whatever, however much, is a lot to hold, isn't it?
But I think even if you think he's going to be back soon, I think he's still worth a sell because of your point there.
Agreed.
Right? Because of the fixtures in matches against Liverpool, as we saw last night, probably Man City net as well. It tends to be Son who kind of gets in behind, tends to kind of steal the points off Kane in those sort of games. So I'd say sell him anyway. Another thing in Son's favour, so in pre-season when Kane didn't get much game time in pre-season, Son was on pens as well. So I think that Kane not being there, as it proved in the second half yesterday against Liverpool, will impact Son. But I also think that Son is he's good enough himself to still cause a bit of damage in there, and he will be on pens as well, which he hasn't been on yet in the Premier League. So I think that I wouldn't be getting rid of Son just because Kane isn't there. The only other thing, in terms of replacements and stuff, we'll touch on strikers now. But Vardy is going to be back in, I think Rogers said earlier this afternoon, back in 7 to 10 days. Now, I think that means back in training rather than back on the pitch. But we also know that Vardy, he relies on his pace and his guile. He's notoriously slow at coming back from injuries as well. So I wouldn't be hanging your hat either on Vardy hitting the ground running. I think if you're looking at Leicester, I think you've got like Barnes and Maddison, will be better.
I think with 7 to 10 days, you're looking at minimum 3 game weeks, aren't you, as well? Because they're quite close together.
Yeah. Yes.
So
yes, they are.
Yeah,
so if it's 7, he's missing the 2 games. 10 games, he's missing. 10 days, he's missing 3. So you're absolutely right. So So I think sell is the right option, but I wouldn't be scared of holding and playing Son still. Again, I think I think I say it every week, but I think that Son is probably has been so far over the whole season the best value player in the game in terms of he returns premium points constantly for not a premium price tag.
He had a spell last season, didn't he, when Kane was out? And it's hard to judge because this season Kane has been so effective and such a good supply line. But he had a spell last season where he was unplayable when Kane was out. I remember actually watching him at Villa Park. It might have even been the last game I went to prior to lockdown. It was definitely the last one at Villa Park. And he got a brace there. I think he actually missed a penalty on that day as well. But he looked, he looked sharp playing through the middle. And I'm just wondering if you maybe might see some more creativity from the likes of Ndombele, or it might allow someone else to step up. So he's quality, isn't he, Son? So I definitely wouldn't sell him at this stage.
Definitely not. Just to jump in the chat for a little minute, Kunal Killer, hey Fergie, Adam, really like the podcast, finally able to catch it live. What about Everton assets with the possibility of a double game? We will touch on that in the next section. Kunal, don't worry about that. And XDN Gurav, captain DCL, again, we'll touch on that a bit later on. Kane to Watkins would leave too much in the bank, and all the premium mids are out of form by Giovanni Hutchins. Really wouldn't worry about money in the bank. This game is not about money, it's about points, and at the moment there are a lot of budget players who are bringing the points ahead of their premiums.
Agreed, yeah.
Ben Booth asks, should we get rid of Bamford? We will touch on that in the next section as well. Gundo or Sterling? That is a really good question. Again, we'll touch on that in a bit. Coach's Football Challenge, Laka feels safer than DCL and on pens. Kiang707, hey lads, I have a bench as solid as such as Saka and Holding. Should I sell Kane for -4? Absolutely. I think we've just kind of answered that. I would get rid. Brian Schofield, I'll probably look forward to your show more than any other on FF. I don't think there's better advice available, and it's done with humility and humour. I think the humour this week is Adam's rank, but well done, lads. Thanks. Thank you very much.
I think I'll take that.
I'll take that. And Charlie Miller, Captain Barnes or Cancelo. We'll touch on captaincy later. Thank you so much.
We're just going to touch on everything later.
Well, it's all coming up now.
I feel like we're deflecting every issue. We'll speak about that later.
Okay, so let's touch on something else now then. So for our YouTube viewers, we've got a graphic up of the Hub's fixture ticker, which you can view anywhere you want at fantasyfootballhub.co.uk for yourself, confirming the fixtures from game weeks 21 through to 24, focusing on the next 4 game weeks only. So top of the shop, as you mentioned, Everton, Newcastle, Leeds, Man United and Fulham. So a really, really nice next 3 in their next 4. Crystal Palace are quite high, and they've got some lovely fixtures too. Home to Wolves, away to Newcastle, away to Leeds, and home to Burnley. So that, some real opportunities for some goals there. Chelsea have got Burnley, Tottenham, Sheffield United, Newcastle. You've then got Fulham, Man United and Leicester, who fill up the top 6 for the best fixtures. Down the bottom, Liverpool's next 4. They're away to West Ham, home to Brighton, which is obviously a nice fixture, but they then got Man City and Leicester. And Burnley, Brighton, Wolves are down there as well. Interestingly, Aston Villa and Man City fill up the top 6 of the bottom teams. So, Adam, firstly, what are your thoughts, fixture-wise, on the teams to target for the next 4 game weeks?
So, I think if you do not have 3 Man City players, I think they are that good. It doesn't matter about the fixtures. And actually, history's shown us that in the tougher games, they can really tighten up. So, having a double defence against the likes of Liverpool and Tottenham could really pay off anyway. So I think City is the first one to target as a priority. Let's have a look at some of the. I think when you're looking at some of the top teams on the ticker, there's a few that I'd probably have question marks. Maybe the lack exciting attacking assets. So at Palace, you possibly got Zaha.
Yeah.
But the thing that would put me off about that, it's sort of like the Newcastle effect, what we talked about before. It's just you're watching them, and there's a lot of games where they don't do much. So he wouldn't be somebody that would interest me. Because you've got Grealish, the same price, much more exciting option, playing in a more exciting team. I think Everton at the top, we've mentioned, I think there's some good options at Everton. I think with having their players back to full fitness, I think Luka Dean, great option. Rodriguez, Calvert-Lewin. So I think they're all really, really exciting options. I think Chelsea, for me, is wait and see. I think I don't think we could get much from the first game of, so I think I'd wait on them. I don't know what you would say on Chelsea.
I think the only thing which stuck out at me is Chilwell at left back had his most advanced game of the season. He was very far forward. So I agree in terms of wait and see. And I think, I think it's a decent time. So their next 2, they've got Burnley and Tottenham, who will pose quite different sorts of challenges.
Yeah.
I think after those 2, they then head into Sheffield United and Newcastle. So I think we can look at these next 2 games and really get a feel for how they're going to play. Are they going to just be tight at the back? Are they going to score goals? And then we can maybe look to target the players then for those really nice run of fixtures.
I think if you own Robertson, you might, because he's a lot of money for what he's producing at the moment. And I think with the injury to Fabinho, I think Trent looked a little bit better, but with the injury to Fabinho and the centre back issues, I think Matip injured as well. What you could do is you've got West Ham and Brighton are the next 2 games for Liverpool. They then play Man City and Leicester. So at when they play Man City, Chelsea have then got Sheffield United and Newcastle. Absolutely. So it's a really good switch over to the likes of Chilwell. And I think they'll score similar points. So you've got an extra $1 million to play with. So I agree. Yeah, I think Chelsea, particularly defensively, are going to have some good options. I think going further down, who else do I like the fixtures for? I think United have got a fairly good long run. It's just they were obviously very disappointed the other night, and I think outside of maybe Maguire and Bruno, it's hard to get excited about too many of their assets. I'm not a fan of Rashford personally from an FPL perspective.
He's so hot and cold, Rashford. He looked superb in the FA Cup, and he played a game a few weeks ago against Leicester where he could have scored a hat-trick easily. But then in all the other games, he never gets in a position to score a goal. He's either really on it or he's really not. There's never any kind of, in between where, he gets an odd chance or he's in a good position. It's so frustrating being an owner of him.
Yeah, I had him earlier in the season. I think when he was good was when I liked owning him best is prior to Bruno coming, because he was on pens.
Yeah,
I think that added, and he was the main man then, wasn't he? Whereas he's not anymore. And yeah, he's hot and cold is the perfect way to describe him. And his position changes a lot. He's on the left, he's through the middle, he's on the right. So yeah, from an FPL perspective, I'm not a fan of Rashford. I think Martial hasn't had his mojo this season. I think Cavani's looked good in spells, but is he going to get the consistency of starts? So for me, Man United, with the only two that I would really consider, with the fact that Luke Shaw isn't a guaranteed starter, it's Maguire and Bruno. I do think Maguire's a good option because he poses such a threat at set pieces. And I think looking at United's longer term fixtures, I can see clean sheets there. I wouldn't be surprised if they kept a clean sheet at Arsenal. They are, when they put their mind to it, they're very, very capable defensively. And sometimes actually when they have to go, and they kept a clean sheet against Liverpool, City, Chelsea. So they're definitely capable of building up on the clean sheets. So yeah, is there anybody else from United you'd consider?
I do like Shaw, so I think he might have had a rest when Tellers played. I think that Shaw has been such a dominant player for them. I think he's really helped transform their play attitude. It was noticeable after he came on, even midweek,
agreed,
that they changed. He's on corners, he's on free kicks. His delivery is really good. He gets in the box on that left hand side and cuts the ball back. So I still think he's 4.8 million. I think that's actually, and if he doesn't play, he doesn't play, right? Which is fine. But I think if you
got a good 5-man defence,
exactly. I think at 4.8 million, if you look at the other options, around that price that are currently kind of languishing in people's teams, people like Loughton and Dallas, Kufal maybe, who are all decent-ish options. I think Shaw, Shaw's a better option. I would have
if you had the funds, would you go Maguire over Shaw?
Probably for surety of start, but I think that's a really good question. I probably have to think about that one, but I think they're equally good options. I think I'd say
that's fair.
I would have been furious as a United owner. As a United fan the other night. The way the casual, arrogant play shown by some of their attackers. Rashford and Martial, I was shocked. Just watching them, just stroking the ball around, chasing the game. They're still stroking the ball around, just trying to look. I think I mentioned it last week on a Sky pod around how they just seem to be a bit more concerned with looking cool than actually getting a result. You look at the intensity that teams like Villa, example, Leicester, another great example. All these teams play with so much intensity and want to win, desperate to win the game. And then you look at players like Rashford and Martial, how they performed the other night. And if I was a United fan, I would be absolutely furious. I got to be honest. So
I'd agree. I think United they'll be in the top 4 and they'll produce some some results that maybe, I think they'll win. They'll definitely finish in the top 4, but I think there'll still be a few of the shock results. I think that's been pretty familiar in Solskjaer's reign. There's been those sort of results, and then they'll bounce back when you don't expect it. So, I think outside of Maguire and Bruno, I see your argument for sure. So I get that as well. I think just going down, I think Leicester have got two good ones in a row. I think he's actually Fulham. Is that a good fixture now? I don't know because they're tightened up defensively. But you could argue Leeds and Fulham. So the likes of Maddison and Barnes. I think indeed he got injured, didn't he?
He did. And I think Evans is either injured or banned as well. I think Ndidi and Evans might be missing this weekend, potentially. But I think with Leicester, so they scored away to Everton last week, but it was a bit of a howler from Pickford, and my concern with Leicester was Vardy. I think I can't stand Vardy because I can never own him at the right time in FPL. But I do think as a player, not only is he's a wonderful goal scorer, but what he gives them off the ball as well. He stretches the defence. He attracts them. He attracts defenders. He takes defenders with him, which gives more room to players like Barnes and Maddison. When he's not there, I'm still not convinced. How good they'll do. Obviously, this specific fixture this weekend, I think the Leicester will do well because Leeds are horrific at the back, right? So I think they'll do okay. But moving forward, as you mentioned, away to Fulham is not going to be an easy game. They've then got away to Wolves, who have reverted back to back five, and then they've got Liverpool. So I'm not sure that moving forward, Leicester options without Vardy are the best. However, I would say I'll be having a bet this weekend on Barnes and Maddison doing well because I don't own them in my teams, but. I think it's a bit of a wait and see. I think when Vardy's back, I think they'll be fine. But Leicester have got quite a nice long run of fixtures now. I think for kind of 14 or 15 game weeks. So I think when Vardy's back, I think we'll see a better
Agreed.
Leicester.
And then we've got Arsenal next down, and they've got a tough one against United. But then they've got Wolves, who have looked a little bit out of sorts. Villa, obviously. A very, very tough game, and then Leeds. They've got three games. I think they're capable of scoring in all of those matches. I think they're playing a different brand and style of football. I think since Saka has moved over to the right, and with Smith Rowe in there, they've looked really good. So I think Lacazette, Saka are really good options still. I think for their price. I don't see either being coming out of the team. What do you reckon about Arsenal?
Yeah, I'm probably not. I'm not quite as excited, I suppose, about Arsenal at the moment. I think Saka in terms of his value is absolutely fantastic value, and I probably think he's the best option. I think with Lacazette, I just feel I take your point. I think he's a decent option, but I think there are better options. That are cheap. I don't think you. I think if someone goes for Lacazette, I think they're forcing it a little bit. I would rather go for Saka. So we've mentioned kind of Watkins, Bamford. I don't think we'll touch on Leeds now. I don't think we've seen the end of Bamford yet. You've got Antonio, you've got Calvert-Lewin with his fixtures. I think Lacazette will be forcing it a little bit.
Be interested if we could get confirmed in the chat about Leicester's centre backs, because if Evans is out. That would potentially be quite interesting for a certain Patrick Bamford. So
you would. And just to touch a bit on Everton, actually. So I looked at their ownership earlier, and Calvert-Lewin, he's still 27% owned in the whole game, which is obviously high. And this is where I think a bit of FPL kind of strategy comes into play. Right, there will be a lot of dead teams probably all around you wherever you are ranked as well. Right, so if you are in between, say, Calvert-Lewin and Lacazette, just as an example, think of that ownership of Calvert-Lewin. He is only 6% owned in the top 10k, so he will very much be a differential amongst engaged players.
I think he's we'll talk about it later.
We'll talk about everything later.
Talk about it later. Yeah,
it's going to be a long stream.
I think he's a good captaincy option this week.
Yes, agree.
I mean, Newcastle are terrible.
I also looked at Luca Dean, who played left wing in the last game, and I think they played well against Leicester. I think they were lucky not to win. I wasn't overly concerned about looking at Calvert-Lewin and the strikers against Leicester. Leicester have been strong defensively this season. They're a team very much in form, so I think 1-1 is a decent result against them. But Digne, again, he's only 3.5% owned overall in the whole game, and only 0.2% owned in the top 10k. So he will be very, very low owned if you fancy Luca Digne. And I'm thinking, I think he had 6 assists before he was injured in the first 10 or 11 matches he played. I think I think the fixtures they've got are good defensive fixtures as well in Newcastle and Fulham especially. Maybe not so Leeds, but we'll see how it goes there. But I think he's a good option as well. I think the only thing with Everton, if we look at all the stats, right? So next we'll look at the stats of the last 4 game weeks to look at the players in form, the players with better underlying stats. There's no Everton players on them. So I think what we are doing, I think that people need to be conscious of this, is we're purely going on how they started the season and looking to apply that to what it is now, with the fact that they've got a nice combo of fixtures and players back. So underlying stats wise, Everton have not been doing well. So I think it's just worth kind of noting that. But I'm saying that I'll probably be looking to bring them both in. So we'll see that. I'm maybe a bit hotter on Palace than you are, especially Zaha. These next 4 fixtures: home to Wolves, away to Newcastle, away to Leeds, home to Burnley. I can see Zaha doing really well, actually. And I think that, we just had a shout there around, crystal ball for the next few weeks. Who's gonna turn it on next? And Zaha scored last week. I think Zaha's going to have a good run. He's back in the team, playing up front, on penalties, plum attacking fixtures. I think that Zaha, over the next few weeks, I'm not going to say he's going to score on Saturday, right? But I think over a period of time, I think Zaha personally is a really good pick. And we've mentioned Minchell last week, obviously at 3.9. Looks like he's starting. Question on Villa, and I'm being serious here. Do fixtures even matter for Villa at the moment?
Nah,
because I just think they're playing so well.
Okay, so I was going to bring this up, and apologies because I know a few people have mentioned the Villa bias, etc. I genuinely try not to, but when they're doing well, it does become relevant for FPL. For me, arguably the best player in the league at the moment is Jack Grealish, and I've got some stats on him, which I think are just to show how well he's done, but more from an FPL perspective. So he played 36 matches last season. This season he's played 18. So you can see he's played 50% of the matches. So he got 8 goals last season. He's already got 6 this year. So what, 75% of the way there. He's got 10 assists this season. He had 7 last year. So he's already passed it in half the games. It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
He touches in the box. Check this out. In 36 matches last season, he had 138 penalty box touches. He's had 136 already. So against Southampton, realistically, he's going to pass in 19 games what he did in 36, which is, but he's playing in a more attacking, more, better pressing side. So I watch what it goes on to show as well is he's getting more of the ball in the final third. In areas where he can hurt people. He's created more big chances already than he did last season. He's had equal amount of big chances. So for me, I'm a bit disappointed I bought Son in last week because it's sort of ruined my route to bringing in Grealish. But I think he's a great captaincy shout this week. I think he's watching him the other night. I don't know if anybody watched the game, but he nearly scored the goal of the season.
He did. It was incredible. I agree.
It's a shame. The only thing that lets Grealish down is his finishing. Sometimes he's maybe not as lethal as the likes of Son. Even Maddison, I think, is better in and around the box with both feet from a finishing perspective. But outside of that, he is, for me, he's the player of the season so far. And just some of the stuff he is doing. I mean, he was exceptional again the other night. What he's doing as well is he will get quite a few pre-assists because everybody just, they're like flies to shit around him. That when he gets the ball, everyone gravitates towards him. So players that could benefit Target definitely could because he's breathed up, and you can see the last couple of games. He's had more space down that left. I think it's helped Barkley being back as well because he's helped the balance of the team. So for me, Villa, they are fixture proof at the moment because they will create chances against any team. So I think both Watkins and Grealish are great options. Traore is a good value option, but he could, go in and out of the team with the likes of El Ghazi and Trezeguet pushing for starts. I think defensively, we let in some silly goals the other night, but our XG conceded wasn't particularly high. It was we've done this. We've had certain games this season where we switched off. So against Southampton, against Brighton, against West Ham. We switched off and conceded some really sloppy goals. But I think Dean Smith's reaction, it was great. It was great to see because he was absolutely livid and he's really laying into the players. And I like that because that wasn't really happening last season. And I think we've set a really, really high standard this year. So I think Villa will bounce back for Southampton. And I think there's just it's hard to make a case. I think the majority of our players, they're definitely in the attacking four and in the back four and the goalkeeper. You've probably got 9 possible options for Villa at the moment.
I did have a look earlier, actually, at Villa's expected goals conceded over the last 4, and it was actually 19th out of 20 over the last 4. It was 1.94 goals per game. Obviously, include the Burnley game, and stuff. So because I've got Martinez, and I wasn't sure about playing him, but I've been looking at targets, and I think he looks a really great option. But at the moment, I'm probably going to leave it. Purely because
I think a lot of that was the City game, so we conceded a really high XG in the City game.
But I think in their next 3, Southampton, West Ham and Arsenal, I fancy all 3 of those to score against Villa. I'm not saying they'll beat Villa, but I fancy them all to score against Villa.
Maybe.
So I'm going to leave it. But, Martinez is such a good shot stopper that he's good for save points anyway, isn't he? So...
Yeah, exactly. But I think from an attacking perspective, if anybody wants a punt on captain this week, I can just see Grealish. I think he's got the bit between his teeth. He was arguing at the end of the match with Ian Woan, the Burnley coach. So he's at the moment he looks absolutely out of this world. So if I could bring him in this week, I need to focus on City. But if there was an obvious route, I would. The only caveat with him is the yellow card situation, and
of course,
but I'm sure he will be able to avoid it. He's not the sort of player that gives away many fouls, so he's just got to watch his mouth, basically.
Ben Booth's having a bit of a laugh in the chat. He says Villa won't finish in the top 10. I'm not sure if he's trying to wind you up, Adam, but
they may or may not do. I think the league is. I think the league's quite open this year, and I think there won't be many points between, say, 10th and 7th. Whether we do. I think we've got goal difference on our side, thanks to...
yeah, definitely. Thanks to the Liverpool game.
Well, I didn't want to say that, but there's been a few games where we've won. I think all of our wins this season, bar maybe one. I think, in fact, it might even be. I'd have to double check all of them where we've kept clean sheets. I think that's correct. I think in all our wins we've kept clean sheets, so which obviously helps with the goal difference.
Okay, so we now have a graphic from our OptaStats tool, which again you can use for yourself at fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, showing expected points in total for the last 4 game weeks. As you can expect, absolutely dominated by Man City all the way down. So I think I've got 16.
I've just got to say, there's been some comments. Adam's discussing Grealish again. I was asked again about Villa. But I think, in fairness, I want to come back to that point. At the moment, he's up there with the best players of the game. So I think it's from a fantasy perspective. I think if I was doing it last year, fair enough. You can pull me up, but
no, that's
anyway,
fair. That's fair enough. So Grealish isn't in the OptaStats top 16 players, but anyway, no, it's completely dominated by Man City players. Let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of the top 16 for expected points in the last 4 games, and it's topped by Cancelo, 33.4, then John Stones, then Gundogan, Bruno is next, Mane, big jump by Mane, obviously, with his haul last night, then Diaz, De Bruyne we can obviously ignore for a while. Son is still in there. Zinchenko, Lacazette was in there, which I thought was interesting, and Saka is in there as well. Watkins is in there. Foden, Bernardo, Sterling, and TAA. So obviously dominated by Man City. So we've had a few questions actually. It's probably worth answering it now. Who are the best 3 Man City picks? If you could pick any 3 now, who would they be now, Adam? Who would your 3 be?
I don't think you can. Cancelo is a must. The way he's playing,
absolutely.
I just can't. Even with rotation, I think most of us can afford decent benches. So I think Cancelo. I would still go Diaz over Stones because I think he's more nailed. Laporte's back, and Pep's comments actually. He actually referenced Laporte. He said when he was talking about we've got Diaz, Stones, and Laporte as options. He brought him on the other night. So I think Stones is more likely to miss out than Diaz. I just think Diaz is the mainstay in that defence, and I think I think the final one is money dependent, because I think you're not going to look at any of their strikers, so you can rule that out. So Jesus can rule that out. So I think you've got a choice between Foden, Gundogan, Sterling, and I mean, if you want to go Bernardo, fair enough. But I think it's between those three, and I think Sterling is a good option, but the problem is that Gundogan is half his price, and I just think the problem with Sterling is just, for me, I find him unreliable and I find him frustrating, and I just think with the form and the fact that he's probably likely to start most matches that De Bruyne is not there, I think for me, he would be the one that I go with. I like Foden. I think it was interesting what Pep said earlier in his press conference about the big difference and the fact that he's getting the wingers to stay high and wide. And and I think so that that's potentially, I think that could be good news for Foden, because he doesn't tend to, and I might be wrong on this, so please, if you do correct me, but he doesn't tend to start Mahrez on the left, does he?
No.
So therefore, Foden's probably the only natural left-footed winger to start on that side. I think that's good news for Foden, and then potentially Sterling as well. But on the right hand side, but he's going to have competition from Torres. I think Sterling could play for it. I think the likes of Sterling, Foden, Mahrez could all fit in the middle as well, because I think it's starting to show he doesn't fancy Jesus. I think Jesus
has been awful, and I don't just mean it from if he was getting loads of chances and hitting them wide, he's not even getting chances. He's not even I tend to watch Man City an awful lot. I'm not a fan. I'm a Spurs fan, but I tend to watch Man City a lot because I've got so much representation in all my fantasy teams, right? So I tend to watch them an awful lot, hoping they'll steamroll teams, they did with West Brom. So I watch them an awful lot. And Jesus gives the ball away so much. He loses the ball all the time. He barely gets any shots away. And you would think, playing in that number 9 role for Man City, you should be top scorer in the league by a fair distance. And he is nowhere near.
I actually think they look better without a striker at times, or a natural striker. And I think what it allows to do is to have a couple of players just floating around, joining up the play. Like we said, with Gundogan, he can get into some good positions. They're harder to pick up. Yeah. So I think Pep is starting to use that more. So would you agree with those three that I've gone with?
Well, I've actually got, so I've got the three, and thinking about what you've just said, actually. So Cancelo and Gundogan for me, both in terms of on form and looking forward now, right? So the positions that Gundogan got into against West Brom, and his finishing was unerring. It was superb. And even in previous games, the previous 3 or 4 games, if you watch the games, Gundogan has been so unlucky not to score more than he has as well. He's on the penalty spot. He's in the 6-yard box. He's there or thereabouts.
Yeah, agreed.
Cancelo seems to adopt this position in kind of right inside right midfield, ahead of the defence, but not quite in the attack, where kind of in between the opposition defensive and midfield lines, where he swings that ball in with his right foot. He's also
sometimes they move to a back 3, don't they? And they'll have whether it's Zinchenko.
They do, yeah.
Diaz and Stones are playing more as a right back, which allows. I think it's definitely suited them changing these tactics. So what were you going to say? So who would be your third? Do you think then?
I think it's Diaz, and because I just think they're so good defensively. Diaz has been unfortunate actually not to score this season as well. I think he's been a hair's breadth away from a 15-pointer a few times this season. And I also think he's guaranteed, well not guaranteed, but he's got 6 points in 9 of the last 10 or wherever it is. And I just think with someone like Sterling or an attacker maybe Foden. I think Sterling is more nailed than Foden, and that's not because I think that he's a better player than Foden, because I actually think that Foden is a better player. But I just think, Sterling is, he's his go-to man, right, for whatever reason, because he hasn't been playing well this season. I've noticed he gives the ball away a lot as well. But Sterling would have to get a minimum of an assist to match Diaz every week. So you may as well just take your 6 points for half the price and be happy with those, with an odd chance of attacking return as well.
I think as well that the premium options, the likes of Salah, Mane, Bruno, Son, are better than Sterling. Whereas if you looked at the defensive alternatives to Diaz and Cancelo, you almost guaranteed a clean sheet. You could say if you have 4 games, you're guaranteed a minimum of 2 clean sheets. Definitely. So I think at the moment, I think even if De Bruyne was fit, it would make sense to go with those 3, because I think it was the last few games, like you said, Gundogan was getting into those positions, and I just think there's other big hitters that at the time were performing fairly well. So I think we're agreed. Diaz, Gundogan, and Cancelo.
Hopefully that answers a lot of questions there. I would say, so we just had a question in the chat around, would you transfer Foden out for Gundogan? I personally wouldn't. I wouldn't hop and change. And we're going to have a bit of a chat in a minute, maybe about Salah and Mane as well. I'm not personally a fan of kind of hopping about between players, because I think they're always kind of sidewaysy moves, and I think, generally speaking, on a one-to-one basis in one individual game, I think that either player is just as likely to kind of get a return, but over a sustained period, you generally have one. But yeah, so I think we've covered Man City there. So let's just ask a question about Mane then. So he's up to 5th in the stats. So he's got expected points over the last 4 games of 29.8. And going on to our next graphic, actually, which shows expected points per game over the last 4. Mane is top out of every player in the Premier League with 7.5 expected points in the last 4, which is quite surprising, since that Liverpool only scored last night for the first time in the 4 games, which maybe says a lot about how unfortunate that Liverpool have been. So Mane and Salah, because we were having a bit of a chat earlier, Adam, and you were maybe thinking about bringing in Mane.
I think forget the sideways move at I know what you're saying on the sideways move, but from watching the 2 and the stats recently, I've always been a big Mane fan, and I think there was a time, I think it was about a season and a half ago, that midway through the season, Mane started to really overtake Salah. He went on a big scoring spree. It's the season he won the Golden Boot with Salah and Aubameyang. And I think a lot of people were late to catch on. And I think the same thing happened at the start of last season. And then it switched around like the turn of the year. And I think since the start of the year, it's been Salah. I think Salah's been fairly reliant on penalties, which I think is fair to say. I don't want to say reliant, but he's had a lot of penalties. And penalties in general, as we pointed out last week, really have calmed down. Were there many penalties this week? Were there any?
I can't think of any, and you can see defenders now are lunging to challenges with their chest, aren't they? So rather than their feet.
I think we called that, and I think so. It does seem. I'm sure there will be some come through, but I don't think we're going to see the same amount that we saw at the start of the season. It never really felt sustainable anyway, particularly when the change in the laws left, right, and centre, or the interpretation of the laws, whatever they call it. So what I see with Mane at the moment is he's getting into the big chance zone, 6-yard box a lot more than Salah. I haven't checked recently, but I don't think, unless this has changed in the last couple of games, Salah's had a shot in the 6-yard box, which is very, very concerning the whole season. It was, unless it happened, I didn't see all of the game last night, so unless it happened last night, but I don't think it did. So I just think at the moment, the way Mane, from what I saw last night, looked absolutely great. He was involved in everything. Even Salah's goal would have been a Mane assist.
We messaged at half time, didn't we, in the Fantasy Football Hub group, and we said even at half time, so he'd only got an assist at that point, and we said Mane should have absolutely hauled because he had a couple of one-on-ones and things as well, and he well in the second half he could have very easily had 3 assists and a couple of goals last night the way he played. And I think
great.
I think observationally watching Liverpool, kind of what I notice is Robertson tends to play much more advanced than Trent at the moment, which helps push Mane inside. But Salah spends a fair bit of time on the touchline, whereas you notice Mane never does, right? So Mane's coming in all the time, and this is why he's kind of getting ahead of Firmino in the attacks. And if you look, every time there's a ball played over the top, centrally into the left, it's always Mane. When the ball's played over the top onto the right-hand side, it's Salah. But Mane is basically occupying 2/3 of the attack there. And it always seems to be Mane at the moment who's getting those one-on-ones. And every time you get him, he's kind of cutting it from that left-hand side. He always looks like he's just going to bend it in the corner. It's always Mane every single time.
I think with Trent picking up form as well, Mane is one of the best in terms of movement for getting headed chances.
Oh, definitely. He's a fantastic
so good.
Ball, yeah.
So look, what I would personally say, and I don't think I'm in a position to do it. I think I've said loads of people are good captain. Well, the captaincy thing. I think Mane is a very good captaincy option this week. I think he's the following week. If I was wildcard and had a choice now, I'll go Mane all day long. Well, I don't need much to tempt me that way. If I had a free transfer, my squad looked perfect, and I didn't really have any moves to do for next week, I would make that move because I think he looked significantly better than Salah. I think there was a big difference between the two. If you watch that game, and there's been a few other games as well where I've watched them recently, and I've just thought Mane's been more involved in the key action areas. So, he set up 9 chances, didn't he, against Burnley? So, he's unlucky not to really get at least an assist in that game. So, I would advocate I think even if you could make the move for a -4, I think over the next 4, Mane would pay you that back and a little bit more personally, unless things change, because Salah is playing so wide, and he's not actually. I don't think he's personally that great at beating players, and he gets blocked out quite easily. So he's just not getting in the positions to score. I think earlier on in the season, he was getting to some nice positions in and around the penalty box where he could have that sort of drilled strike, which he mastered and scored a few goals doing it. But it's just not happening for him at the moment.
Yeah, we're getting a fair few questions in the chat around, swapping A player for B player, so things like Salah for Mane, Stones for Diaz. I would just leave them, right, because you know what's going to happen. It's just going to switch. And I think it's fair to say, we've noticed it last season and the season before. That generally over a period of time, these players, though, these ones who you have the big dilemma over, it's owning the right player at the right time. But over the period of a season, they generally, seem to score quite similarly. Okay, Salah will probably outscore Mane over the season, but generally they're not poles apart, are they? So, and just to go a bit further down the list in terms of expected points per appearance for the last 4, De Bruyne was there surprisingly, even though he barely scored any points. Son is still high, he's still up there. So even after last night, Son is still up there. Bolly in his last 2 was quite interesting. So he's only played 2 since he's back from injury, but his expected points average is 7.1. Over those 2, and then we've got Lacazette and Tierney, and Saka's a bit further down as well. So again, that kind of Arsenal representation there we touched on Arsenal earlier, and then you've got all the City players basically. So, but yeah, that's kind of expected points per appearance there over the last 4. And just to touch, so we've just got a final graphic actually, which highlights Salah versus Mane. So this is our a graphic from the Fantasy Football Hub comparison tool, and it just shows the difference between Salah and Mane over the last 4. For those who can't see it, who are listening on a podcast, Mane's got 22 points to Salah's 7. Mane absolutely thrashes Salah in every aspect in terms of expected points, expected goals, big chances, shots in the box, shots on target, shots, touches in the box, final third passes. I think is the only thing which Salah has slightly more. And
So I think on this then, because I think what you said about Stones and Diaz, perfectly valid. I think it is like for like. They're very. You're buying the defensive points there. I think it's different with Salah and Mane. I don't think they are like for like, and I think they have spells where one is slightly better than the other, and it's happened. It almost goes in like half a season spells, and it's happened a couple of times over the last few seasons. You also, because you would be captaining them potentially against Brighton, I think that means it would make a transfer more worthwhile.
Yeah.
And you've got to think about that most people, and I'm just making an assumption here, will stick with Salah. Maybe if Mane braces against West Ham, people might start to think about that. But most people will stick with Salah. So I think there's a big. We talked about opportunities, and I missed one about not getting Cancelo and Gundogan in last week. But I think there's an opportunity with Mane, the way Salah's playing, I don't see huge risks. I think at worst case, I think Mane matches him over the same number of games.
That's fair. I personally would make the move. I think if you haven't got a Liverpool attacker and you're looking for one, I'll go for Mane, 100%.
Yeah, agreed.
But I personally wouldn't advocate taking out Salah for Mane because I just think it's asking for trouble, right? And that's why personally, it only takes, as we say, it is unfair, but it's part of the game. It only takes a couple of penalties for Salah to get a 9-pointer, Mane to blank, etc.
Yeah, of course it does.
I personally think that, but appreciate the point. I do think the Mane probably the better option at the moment. Okay, so moving on, and Adam, we have your team now for Gameweek 21. If you could read it out for the podcast listeners and let us know your thoughts going into the coming game week.
Oh, right, I've got to go back to my team. So my tragic lot. So I have got I've got a choice between Johnston and Meslier. I'm going to go with Johnston because I think Big Sam is going to want a clean sheet. It's going to happen at some point. It's bad, but I think they've got Fulham at home, and Fulham I don't think offer loads in attack. So I think the next two, Fulham and Sheffield United, are probably the ones they will absolutely target for the clean sheet. So, and I fancy Leicester to score. So I will go with Johnstone in goal. I then have Diaz, Justin, and Robertson at the back. Midfield at the moment is Rafinha, Salah, Son, and Fernandez, and then I've got Watkins, Bamford, and who else?
Antonio.
And Antonio. Yeah, happy with one of the few players I'm happy with. Yeah, so I think I will take at least a -4 this week. I'm interested, so please comment in the chat about options because I'm open to all ideas. I think I don't have at the moment enough Man City coverage. So the obvious move, and I think I probably will do this, is to bring Gundogan and Cancelo in. And then it's just who do I take out, whether it will either be Souček or Rafinha. And I actually did really like the post that we read earlier, and it's made me think. I think with Souček, I think he's a good player to have, and he's fairly cheap, but it's just gonna lead to a lot of bench points. And that's frustrating because he's so difficult to predict, and I think you have to start him every week, and he's not my sort of player because he just gets a lot of his goals come from set plays or from those type of things, and it's just so hard to predict. I like players that are consistently producing the numbers, and whilst Rafinha isn't doing that, I liked his performance against Newcastle, so I've got a decision to make there. But either way, whoever it is, they'll probably be on the bench. So I think I will take out. I'll probably keep Robertson. So I'll take out Holding and either Rafinha or Souček. So that, and then it gives me 3 City, and that's ultimately, I think I need that. The areas that I'm worried about, I'd prefer Mane over Salah, but that's not a pro. Like you said, it's not. I've got other issues. I'm going to have to keep
Mane's
Son.
ownership as well, right? He's not going to.
Yeah, exactly.
Punish
And I
him with
might,
his ownership.
and I can potentially do that move next week. I think Son is fine. He could easily do well, and he's the sort of player that can score against anyone. Unlucky last night. I like Bruno. I think he could be overlooked this week for captaincy. I've just basically said he should captain everyone now. So, and then I've got. I think my strikers. I'm happy with Antonio and Watkins. The one spot that I'm not happy with is Bamford, but I might start in v Leicester because I remember watching the reverse fixture, and he had 3 big chances against them. And I mean, his XG was ridiculous that night. He should have scored. And with Ndidi out, I think I think the game could be closer than people are calling. I think Leicester will win, but without Vardy and potentially Evans, I don't think Evans is shot.
Fit, sorry, Evans is fit, but Ndidi's not. We had some comments.
Well, I think Ndidi is Indeed is the one for me that that is really, really influential on that team. And I think Leicester aren't as good without him. So I think whilst I would like to have Calvert-Lewin, I'm not sure taking a -8 to get him in is sensible. I think because Bamford is capable of scoring, and I might just give him one more go. What would go on? Sorry, I was going to say.
No. In terms of specific transfers and stuff, it all makes sense. I think my only concern with not bringing in someone like Calvert-Lewin, if you think Calvert-Lewin is going to do well, right? I'm not saying do it because everyone else is doing it, and whatever else. But it just means again next week you're a week behind the curve, and you'll probably have to make another hit. But you're still only getting your team up to where you want it to kind of be. You're never on the front foot. Is my only
you're right,
only thing.
You're right, because actually if I'd have taken the hit last week to bring Cancelo in, I wouldn't be thinking about it this week.
You'd already have him, and now you'd be moving ahead. Whereas, but booking in transfers week on week, it doesn't. And I know because I did it last season. I did it every week. I kept bringing in the player that everyone else brought in the week before, and it really punished me all season. And I'm determined this year stay on the front foot.
I think if I brought Calvert-Lewin in, the one plus about potentially keeping Bamford is that if I was to not wildcard, I think they have they're likely to double in 26 and play in 29, and that could be a big plus of keeping Rafinha and Bamford. But then that's still quite a while away, isn't it?
8 weeks, well,
and actually,
8 weeks down the line.
Everton could double, couldn't they? So, yeah. Do you know what? You might have talked me into a -8. I think that, again, this is mind games. I'm not. I don't know whether.
Like in terms of specific ones, I'm thinking if you think the Calvert-Lewin is going to hit the ground running, and he can have a better fixture than home to Newcastle, right? If you think he's going to do well this weekend, I would personally do it. But I'm keeping Bamford. I'm not sure if I'm starting him yet, but I personally don't think that the Bamford is spent either. So please don't do it on my account. But I would say is structurally get to where you want to be.
Yeah, I don't think Bamford's spent at all, and I don't think Leeds are. But I like Calvert-Lewin versus Newcastle,
and Everton may well have a double in 24 as well. It hasn't been sorted out yet, but that's something to think about as well, which is obviously before the Leeds ones you're talking about, right?
Yeah, but I think bringing in Gundogan and Cancelo, I mean, is a bit of a no-brainer. I can't see any argument.
No,
I think we discussed it earlier, but I can't see any argument not to bring them in. I think, so, and then the captain's an interesting one. Should we leave the captain?
Yeah. We'll
cover it later.
Yeah, okay.
Go on then. Let's go through your team's probably one step ahead of mine at the moment.
Well, a couple actually, but yeah. So I've got Martinez. I've got Martinez in goals at the moment. I'm going for Martinez over Johnston. So West Brom at home have just conceded 5-3, 5-3 or whatever it is at home.
If I had Martinez, start him over John. Southampton have actually been a little bit toothless attack wise as well.
Yeah,
so
agree.
And the other thing to add is that Villa they got a bit of a bollocking for their defensive performance the other night.
Yeah.
So I would definitely go Martinez over Johnson.
I personally think Southampton will score, but I think that still Martinez is probably more likely to keep a clean sheet than Johnson, which I'm going for him. So I've got Diaz and Cancelo. I've also got Justin, who I bought a few weeks ago, who has been superb for me. So happy with that at the moment. At the moment, I've got a midfield 5 of Soucek, Salah, Son, Fernandes, and Gundogan. And I've got Watkins and Bamford up front. I've got a bench of Johnston, Kufal, Dallas, and Adams. So my current thoughts, my immediate thoughts are West Ham's fixtures. I think the next couple are okay, but their fixtures are not fantastic over a longer period of time. So I'm thinking, and as we mentioned earlier, Dallas could potentially have the double in 26 and a fixture in 29 as well. So my thought at the moment is to take out Adams and Kufal for Calvert-Lewin and Digne, which I can do comfortably, which will give me an 11 of Martinez, Diaz, Cancelo, Justin, Digne, Soucek, Salah, Son, Fernandes, Gundogan, Watkins, and Calvert-Lewin. It would mean putting Bamford on the bench, which is kind of why I mentioned that earlier. I do think
would you bench Soucek against Liverpool?
No, I'm going to bench. It would be. Oh yes. Oh no.
I mean, I know you're trying to get ahead of the curve. It looks like you're starting 12 men.
I'm gonna have to have a think about the benching, about that 11th benching. It would either be, oh goodness me, it would either be Soucek or
Justin,
or Watkins.
100%. The ceiling
I'm not
for
benching Watkins
higher than Justin for me.
No, agree.
And I think Leeds will score. So I think Leicester will win and Leeds will score. That would be my prediction.
If I was if I was to call it now, I would put Soucek on the bench, which is
yeah.
But that starting 11 for me would be so good that I don't think I would have Soucek and Bamford on the bench and Dallas, but my 11 would be superb, I think. And it moves me on forward, right? So I'll be getting in Calvert-Lewin and Digne for these games. They'll be low owned, and I'm hopefully over these next 4 expecting biggish things. So that's in my head at the moment. Obviously, we've still got all this evening and tomorrow morning to actually get to my final decision and really, really kind of think about it. But that is what I'm thinking about at the moment. What are your thoughts on it?
Okay, so I think your midfield, your 2 problem players. I think your problem player is Adams, isn't it? That's the big one. So I think Adams to Calvert-Lewin makes sense. And then you could potentially, if you wanted Antonio next week, you could make that move. So I think Adams to Calvert-Lewin is a no-brainer. Have you got, was it 2 frees or 1 free?
1.
With another hit,
Be a hit,
I don't think I'd take a hit for Luca Dean, because the only reason I wouldn't is straight away you're wiping out the clean sheet, and stranger things have happened. So therefore, you can pretty much, let's say that Justin +4 matches Luca Dean. He might get an assist or he might get a clean sheet, but then Justin's just as capable, or he's capable anyway. So therefore, you're looking, if you've taken out the Newcastle game, you're looking at, is it Leeds, Man United, Fulham? Yeah, I can see why you're doing it. And I think you definitely do the Calvert-Lewin one. And it gives you a bit of a benching headache as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, but as we've said at the moment, in these times, having a strong bench is not the worst thing. Although I would say that.
But you'd have a strong bench either way, wouldn't you? You'd have a playing bench either way, wouldn't you? So.
Exactly. Antonio, I obviously really want Antonio, right? But I can't just. I'm struggling to take out Watkins or Bamford. Bamford is a one. He's very, very popular to take out this week for Antonio, for Calvert-Lewin, but to me Bamford just isn't not spent yet. He's still got points and goals in him, I think. And the fixtures actually, so after this next, after the game they play now against Leicester, the next two are home to Everton, home to Palace as well, which are probably quite decent in terms of attacking. There I am, I'm saying about, Bamford against Digne there, but, the Palace game especially, I don't just want to move players around because West Ham have got Liverpool, right? And everyone's saying in the chat, and they're probably right. Soucek and Antonio will have a field day against a team with no centre backs, but Liverpool in these big games tend to find a way to defend really well and play really well. And look against Spurs last night. That the second half, especially without Kane, Spurs did not have a sniff apart from that. Højbjerg rocket from outside the box. I
think West Ham will score.
I think they'll score, but I can't see anyone hauling. If Antonio scores against 8 or 9 points, fine. But if Bamford scores against Leicester, he'd probably get the same as well.
Yeah, so agreed. I wouldn't bring your Antonio in this week. You go Calvert-Lewin, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'm just not in a massive rush. And the next two, then they're away to Villa and away to Fulham. Then, so as I say, West Ham. I'm not in a massive rush. I've got Soucek already. Who's there and who's he's a massive threat. So and if you look at the other players I've got talking about playing as well, Salah, Son, Bruno, Gundogan, Watkins, Calvert-Lewin, Cancelo, Justin, all these players are very proven FPL assets. So quite happy. So yeah,
I think you're in a strong position. I think if you like getting ahead of the curve, so I think I can see why you would want to make that move, and I think there'll be. With Kane's injury, there might be a few hits flying around this week. So yeah, I think you'll be nicely set up anyway for the next few weeks as well, won't you?
Geo Boys in the chat says just do Calvert-Lewin for Adams, Fergie, and I think I might. That's the move I'm definitely doing. Because if I do that, I can then play Soucek, and I'll be playing a 3-5-2 with a really strong team.
What's really interesting, you've tried to talk me into an extra -4, and I've tried to talk you out of a -4.
Is it?
Interesting. And I don't even think I'm a particularly cautious player, but yeah, that's quite an interesting.
Well, this is why I always, and I give really good credit actually to you and our watchers, because I always like to talk through my team, and in the end, I always seem to get to a position which I've had 6 greens on the bounce now, which for me is pretty good, so I can please that. But I do give an awful lot of credit to yourself and to our watchers as well, kind of steer me with all my crazy ideas of -12s and -8s. We always kind of get to the nub of it and make that change. And that's really helped.
I mean, I don't think it's a bad -4, but it's one that may pay off. It may not. Exactly. It's you're effectively wiping out the clean sheet. That's how I would see it.
No, that's fair. That's really fair. Okay, onward now then to the captaincy. So who is the best captain for Gameweek 21? Everyone's been asking all stream for this, so we're getting to it now. Absolutely wide open. So we put a poll up earlier on Fantasy Football Hub. Actually, we put this on yesterday before Kane got injured, which is why Kane is in it. But Gundogan, Cancelo, and we put Kane or Son, and then Salah. Gundogan got 24.5% of the vote. Cancelo 19.3%. Kane or Son got 43.6% of the vote. So they were the favourite. Be interesting to see now if that would actually be the same without Kane in the team.
I don't think it will. No.
And Salah was the lowest out of the 4 actually, with just 12.7%. This was before the game last night. So Adam, I mean, it's probably a wide open captaincy, right? As we've had all season. What are your immediate thoughts on captaincy?
Wow, where do I start? Because I've tipped everyone tonight, haven't I? So, right, okay. I think the contenders are, and I'll try and narrow it down a little bit. I think of the forwards, I like Calvert-Lewin the most. I just think Newcastle at home, Watkins had quite a number of chances against them. So I would say that of the forwards, I think I wouldn't be surprised to see a brace from Calvert-Lewin in that match. I think they've got a few defenders out as well. A tiring Leeds beat them. They've got all the main people back. You think that Everton, whilst they were quite reserved against Leicester, you think they'll be a little bit more attacking against Newcastle. So I'm backing Calvert-Lewin. I think outside, who else? I think the other contenders for me, I think Liverpool will beat West Ham, maybe 2-3-1. And I think the form that Mane showed the other night, if I had him, I'd be very, very tempted to captain him. I thought he looked that good that he's going to cause anyone problems. And I think, so he causes the defensive Spurs team problems. So I like Mane as well. I mentioned Grealish earlier. I can see Southampton are missing their fullbacks. He's just getting better and better. I think he is a really, really good option. Now, sadly, I don't own any of those. So it's
you don't know any of the best captaincy options.
I don't own any of the best captaincy. They're the three that I really like, and I could see in terms of I could see them really exploding this week. I think Man City versus Sheffield United. I think this might be a 2-0. I don't think it. I think Sheffield United equipped themselves well the other night, and I think with the game coming up against Burnley quite quickly afterwards, I think Man City might do a job on them and get the win, take the key players off. But I do like, I am tempted with the players that I do own. Gundogan is probably who I'm considering at the moment because I can see him getting a goal, clean sheet point, maybe a 10 or 11 pointer. And then the only other person who I would mention is I think sometimes in these game weeks, there's certain players who've got such a high ownership that you never have any benefit owning them. However, someone like Bruno, you would get the benefit only if you captained him this week, you could actually want him to haul. And he's capable of doing well against anyone. Great away record. So I think if you genuinely are not enthused by any option, put it on Bruno because I think he's looked at as sorts of late. If you looked at the expected points chart that we had up earlier, he's underperformed. So there'll be a reaction from United. They're quite a good counter-attacking side. So I think if you're struggling on it, the safest one, go for Bruno, and he could easily get a double-digit return, and you benefit from it. Are there any that you're looking at the moment?
Yeah, I think the first piece of advice would be, we're getting a lot of people asking the chat, right? Who is the best captain this week? As I've mentioned, so we've got 4 on screen. I've got another 6 here in my notes, and there's others. So I haven't mentioned people like Grealish and this and that. It's so wide open. I think this is a week you can literally just have a punt, and I don't think it'll matter because I think there are 6, 7, 8 very, very good options. So I think that's the thing I'd say first. Don't get hung up on. I would literally go with who you want this week. There's no effective ownership worry about any of these players. In terms of who I think, you're getting a bit of stick in the chat, Adam, for kind of naming every FPL player as the best captain.
No, normally you'll get other people do captaincy videos, so I'm just balancing it out to depending on people, because I think Mane and Calvert-Lewin, a lot of people don't currently own them, so
no, that's fair enough.
Floating them out there. So
I agree with you on Man City. So Sheffield United's expected goals conceded over the last 4 is the 6th best in the league actually, and it averages at 1.08. So I don't think that City are going to do to Sheffield United what they did to West Brom. I think you mentioned it. I think it could be like a 2-0 or something.
2-0.
I don't think it's going to be personally. Maybe wrong, right? But based on the stats and based on the way that Sheffield United defended the other night, I think it'll be like a 2-0. I think it's more likely to be a 2-0 rather than a 4 or 5-0 personally, which kind of puts me a little bit off the attackers. Although Gundogan being on penalties and playing in that kind of false 9 role, he seems to be camped on a penalty spot whenever they attack. I do think that Gundogan is probably the best. I'd say the best attacking option. This week, however, Oh, and the further thing on Gundogan, Pep said in his presser earlier that Gundogan is definitely going to start, which is always a thing on Pep Roulette, right?
Agreed.
That you never know who's going to start and who not, and you don't want to be putting it on a player, especially especially if they come on for a one-pointer. I think Gundogan is the best attacking option for this week. However, I do think that Cancelo has probably again got a really good ceiling here, because I can't see Sheffield United scoring, so he probably starts off on 6 points. Any kind of attacking return will probably yield a 12-pointer for him. So I think I agree with you with Gundogan's scoring. He probably gets a 10-pointer.
Which one do you agree with me on? Because I've said quite a few.
With Gundogan, if he scores, he'd likely get a 10-pointer. Yeah. If Cancelo, gets an attacking return, which he's obviously far more likely not to get one than he is to get one. I think he can. He's got a base of 6, but I also think he's got a ceiling, of 15 or 17. So I personally would probably be looking at those two. I think depend on on your kind of risk appetite there in terms of I think the really risky one there is Cancelo. I think he's got the higher upside, but I do think that Gundogan for me is probably. I've got it on Cancelo in my team at the moment, but I think I'll be putting it on Gundogan. Other players are Man.
The other thing to mention, and I think a good way of thinking it with captaincy, it's effectively owning an extra City player in that case, isn't it?
Definitely.
So you effectively have got 4 City players. So I think that's a good way of looking at it. I think I'll be going Gundogan at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think I do like some of the. I think a reason for mentioning so many players, like you've said, is that I think you can go with your gut this week and just enjoy it with limited risk.
Oh, you know what?
I'm with that, and I think depending on who you own, go for a low ownership player, go for someone you enjoy watching. I think this is the week to have fun with your captaincy. I think Cancelo's spot on. I like that show. The only thing put me off Cancelo is the uncertainty of him starting, because you could just get a 1-pointer there. I think if you'd have said Cancelo is definitely starting, like you said about Gundogan, I would definitely be involved. I would be considering Cancelo.
I do wonder, because Pep also mentioned his presser this afternoon that he thinks his team are going to struggle against the 5-3-2. Is Cancelo the ideal player to have in that attacking a
yeah, of course he is. Yeah.
So it's a tough one. But in my notes, Sterling, Calvert-Lewin, Mane, Grealish. I know I mentioned them earlier in a bit of more a negative light, but I do think if you own Barnes or Maddison against Leeds this week, I think that they may just get an attacking return. Like I mentioned earlier, I think if Vardy was playing, I would expect Leicester to maybe score 3 or 4 past them. I think with Vardy not there, they maybe score 1 or 2. But I think Barnes and Maddison will be involved. So I'm not getting them in because I don't particularly like their fixtures after Leeds. But I do think if I had them this week, I'd be tempted because they're playing so well. They play with such intensity, attacking flair, and Leeds they just struggle at the back. So I think, if I had Barnes and Maddison, I think I'd personally still captain Gundogan, but I do think that Barnes and Maddison are good shout as well.
Is there anyone we wouldn't captain this week?
Well, I'm going to upset you here, right? And I'm sure we'll have words at some point, but I'm not as convinced as Grealish as an FPL option that you are. Don't get me wrong. What a player, right? What a player. I haven't got any argument in terms of him as a player. Yeah. But for me, with him not being on set pieces, he's not in the box as much as some other players. So I think he's better. Like, I've got Watkins, and I'm quite happy having Watkins. I'm not scared of not owning Grealish. I'm quite happy having Watkins because Grealish draws all the attention to him when he's kind of driven down the left hand side, right? Which leaves Watkins, kind of, on his own in the middle, which is kind of how the goal was scored against.
Agreed.
So don't get me wrong. I think he's a wonderful player, but I'm not that scared of not owning.
I like him for this game week because I think with Southampton and their fullbacks out. Yeah,
Bertrand's back on the left-hand side, but Walker Peters, where Grealish is going to be on that.
Exactly. So
I think it's
it wouldn't make too much difference anyway. I don't think.
So,
although actually he did a good job on Mane, didn't he? So that's that. Walker Peters.
So we're both sticking our neck out. Gundogan is our pick.
I don't want to go Gundogan. I feel that I want to resist it as much as I can do, but I think at the moment, I think it feels good to have Footy players. I've sort of one player just when we were going through that because I can't own Mane, I can't own Grealish. Calvert-Lewin's a -4, and it's the first game, which sometimes it shouldn't affect it, but it sets you off for a terrible game week, doesn't it? With the dragged out game week, so. The one player I was sort of talking myself into, and I hadn't even considered it before this podcast, was Bruno, because I can just see he's never. He's just one of these players that he just gets points, and his away record is incredible. I think United will want to bounce back. It could be a tight game, which I suppose is a negative to it, but I don't know. I think he'll be back in the points this week, and I think he'll be back big. And it's sometimes when you don't back him, he does tend to do well. And he's the sort of player that drags United forward and has a huge influence. So I haven't ruled out Bruno as an option. I think it'll be between Bruno and Gundogan. And I think if Bruno does well, then I'd get I'd benefit a lot more than everybody else. So they're the two at the moment.
Makes sense. I'm on Gundogan with Cancelo as my second place at the moment. In terms of the predicted best Game Week 21 captain from fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, Sterling is actually top.
Is he really?
Top of that, 6.4. Salah is second. Cancelo third. Diaz fourth. And Foden fifth. So if you do want to look at more points...
So basically, no one that we mentioned.
No one we mentioned.
Cancelo maybe.
Cancelo's in third. If you do want to look at your own predictions,
what does that know? I mean, it's only
it's only got like a million algorithms which looks at every single game a million different ways. But but
it doesn't consider the eye tester, does it? So I'm not interested.
It's just worth noting. Actually, we've just broken our record for our highest number of concurrent viewers. We had over 700 live watches. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Hopefully we're giving you a bit of advice to help you set it up nicely for game week.
And exactly, and it means more people have got the opportunity to win a mug as well.
This is it. So on to that, actually. So this is competition time now for our YouTube watchers. So every week, all our YouTube watchers have a chance to win a Fantasy Football Hub mug, which I am showing now to the camera. Beautiful, beautiful mug. They are fantastic quality.
My wife used mine earlier. I was a bit annoyed.
Be fuming on that. We are selling these mugs too, along with other Hub merchandise in association with that FPL merch. There's a link in the description below, and we're currently running a 20% off discount using coupon code FFHub20, whilst Hub members can get 25% off. So last week, Game Week 19, we did have actually two people who correctly went with John Stone. For some reason, I couldn't find him last week, but there was. And we have a random winner. So I did a draw between the two, and the winner was Super Tiger. So many congratulations for Super Tiger, who picked John Stones, who got his, was it a 27-pointer in double Game Week 19. So drop me a DM and we will get you a mug sent off for you. And for Game Week 20, we had quite a lot of watchers who guessed Cancelo. So our random winner was Daniel Roberts. So many congratulations, Daniel. Again, drop me a DM, Daniel, and we will sort you out with a Fantasy Football Hub mug. Thank you so much for those who entered. So for this week, chance to win one of these mugs, please like the stream. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not already, and then comment on who you think will be the top FPL point scorer in Game Week 21. It is limited to one entry each, and if there is a tie, we'll do a random draw for the winner. So last week I picked Rafinha, who was actually, I think he was the third or fourth highest scorer after
the top scorer, was
Cancelo was. Or Soucek. Adam, who is your pick this week?
I think it will be Mane or Grealish. So I will go. I think the way Villa are attacking at the moment, I can see. I'll go Grealish.
You're going Grealish, okay.
Going Grealish, yeah. Could see a big score from him.
And for my pick, who's first on your bench again this week, sorry?
Who's first on my bench? I don't even know. It's going to be, who will it be? I don't even know. So
I'm playing. So for my pick, I mentioned him earlier, my tip for the next 4 or 5 weeks, the player I think who is going to do very, very well, I'm going to go for Wilfried Zaha. I think he is going in for a run, and I think he's going to do well
against Wolves
this week.
Sure.
Yeah, I think he's going to do well this week, and I think he's going to do well for the next few weeks.
I think he's a good shout. He's a good shout long term, but I don't see loads of goals in that Palace Wolves game.
Okay, you ragged out my Rafinha pick last week before he smashed it, so
I'm bringing in Zaha straight away now. Yeah, not even captain him.
Captain, he's the only player you hadn't mentioned. So
exactly. So yeah. So basically, I've got no idea who I'm captaining at the moment. I'm more confused than when I started.
And finally, just a quick look at the top of our at FFH_Green Arrow Mini League. In 10th place, Will Hollin. In 9th place, Lou Banks. 8th, Ivan Duhaid. 7th, Matt Summerfield, moving up with a good game week score of 77. Matt Graham in 6th. Russell Baker in 5th. Vigard Knutson in 4th. Luka Bubnich in 3rd. El Kamali down, only had a 47-pointer, which was still better than you this week, Adam, but only a 47-pointer this week for El Kamali. And top, a very familiar name, Ollie Rantala, who is currently sat at 90th overall and actually used his wildcard this week. So that was an interesting move from Ollie. Very, very well done to everyone who was in that top 10. You're all having absolutely fantastic seasons. Many congratulations. I'm just going to pop our mini league code into the chat. So if you're not part of our at FFH_Green Arrow mini league, I've just put the code in the chat, and also make sure you follow at FFH_Green Arrow on Twitter too. So that is a wrap from us for this week. A bit of a confusing week. I think we've got 2 more deadlines now. We've got next Tuesday and next Saturday, and then we get back. It's a bit of a weekly cadence there, Adam, where we can actually have a think before we come on, because what I'm finding every podcast at the moment is that we're coming on with an hour or two sort of thought, and it's really, really difficult. But thank you so much to all our loyal watchers and listeners for their great questions, comments, and continued support. We really, really, really do appreciate it. Adam, best of luck to you for Game Week 20, and hopefully be back in the Green Arrows next week.
You know what? You've said best of luck. I need some luck. I just want
any luck.
Yeah, just something so I can say, well, that was a little bit lucky. So, yeah, and I'll take that. Same to you, but I don't think you need it as much as me.
Well, not at the moment, mate, but we know how quickly it can turn, and I know that you've beaten me. So Adam's at a higher rank than me. I think I beat Adam, I think, twice in the last 9 seasons. So if I can beat Adam this season,
you're on fire. You're on fire. I mean, you've got to be up there with being one of the best fantasy managers across all formats. Come on, this season.
You will make me blush. But
I know what you're still first in Sun Dream Team.
Second, I dropped down because someone had Grealish. So we basically got the same team, but he's got Grealish. I had Gundogan. If
you buy the Sun, are you actually listed in there at all? I don't. Still put the Dream Team in there.
I'm not. I gotta be honest. I'm not sure. I don't buy the Sun, but I really do enjoy the fantasy game. But years ago, in the Telegraph and all that stuff, I think they used to list the top 50 or 100, whatever it was. Where can people get hold of you, Adam?
A Hopcroft 13 on Twitter, or crying in my bedroom if I have another. Crying in my bedroom if I have another bad game week.
My Twitter handle is at Fergie222, which I'll be changing soon actually to Fergie time, because that's what I name on my teams. I don't know why I've got it as Fergie222.
Don't change your Twitter handle. I have enough problems with it as it is.
You do. So for those
poor Fergie
for those who don't know, Adam has tweeted Fergie from the Black Eyed Peas on multiple occasions this season, giving her grief for having Phil Foden in her team. I bet she's there thinking, who's this?
She's quite happy with all the praise I've given her with Gundogan.
She is. She's like, yeah, this Gundogan sounds like a good bloke. So this podcast and video will be on the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel, with the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you like what you watched, please click the like button. Could everyone press like now? It would be very, very much appreciated. And remember, if you haven't already, to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast and leave a comment. If you want, you can leave some 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. Again, that will be very much appreciated. Our handles on Twitter, Instagram and TikTok are at FFH_HQ, and our podcast Twitter handle is at FFH_Green Arrow. So make sure you follow our website. It's fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you will find everything you need for fantasy football, all under one roof, including player comparison tools, the fixture ticker, up the stats, top player team reveals, point prediction tools, and much, much more. If you're not a member of the Hub, you're thinking of getting on, get on Fantasy Football Hub at the moment on FPL, on Sky, Sun Dream Team, Telegraph, every single format. Our members are absolutely smashing it. And we have writers who reveal their teams every week. We've got FPL General at the moment. He's up to 1.6k. He reveals his team every single week for members of Fantasy Football Hub before the deadline. Our very own Will, the CEO and founder, is like 2.5k. We've got so many players who reveal their teams every week pre-deadline to give you all the very best fantasy advice. Fantasy Football Hub is the place to be if you want to win your mini league and do well at fantasy football. To join the tens of thousands of other fantasy managers to sign up to the Hub, to use all our amazing resources, just click the top link in the description below. We promise you will not regret it. We'll be back live at some point prior to game week 22. We still have to work out a time, Adam, where we can squeeze in another 122. Stay safe all, and may all your arrows be green. Good night all.